Hey everybody, Doc Talbot here tonight. Thanks a lot for joining me for the Wellness Wednesday. Let me just get the chat window open. Um, so you know what? I'm gonna close that real quick. I'm gonna open this guy. I want to. We're gonna have a good discussion tonight about prebiotics. So let me share my slides, and we'll just jump right into it. All right, everybody. So thanks a lot for joining me. Tonight is our Wellness Wednesday. We always have a interesting topic around the microbiome or the gut-brain axis or some aspect of what you can see on the screen right now, mental fitness. Tonight we're going to talk about here feeding the good. Prebiotics that actually change outcomes. This is the second in a four-part series of beneficial biotics or BS. Biotics are one of the hottest areas of nutrition right now. In fact, one of the hottest areas of all of wellness. But there's a lot of confusion out there. Let me just say it that way. So tonight we're going to focus on prebiotics, and across this series, we're going to cover all the different kinds of biotics. So you can see here last week we talked about probiotics. So those are the bacteria that are in our microbiome. Tonight we're going to talk about prebiotics, which I'll define for you in a second, but just for the sake of discussion right now, they're the food, they're the fuel for your microbiome. Next week, we're going to talk about a really interesting type of biotic. These are called postbiotics. These are typically dead bacteria, and we'll talk about how those can actually be maybe in some cases even more effective than some of the live bacteria that we talked about last week. And then we're going to wrap up our four-part series with phytobiotics, which is a term that I coined, which refers to plant extracts that have a biotic effect because of the way they signal across the gut-brain axis. So lots and lots of great information. Last week we had tons of people on the call. We had tons of questions, which was really good. So speaking of questions, if you have questions as we're going through, um, please, by all means, put them in the chat, and I'll stop periodically when I get to a good place in my slide deck, and I'll answer the questions, and we'll keep rolling. Okay, that's the benefit of jumping on these Wellness Wednesdays live, is that you get to have your questions answered. So what you can see on the slide right now, on the screen right now, is some of my background. I like people to know kind of where I'm coming from when I make the recommendations on these calls that I do. So I'm trained in nutritional biochemistry. That's what my PhD is in. But the kind of work that I do is sometimes called nutritional psychology. That nutritional psychology didn't even exist as a discipline back when I was going to graduate school. But it's this idea of using nutrition to change psychology, or using nutrients to change different psychological outcomes. So we can use, like last week, we talked about probiotic strains that can help to improve your mood, or boost your energy levels, or sharpen your focus, or improve your resilience, which is your ability to handle stress, right? So, using nutrients to change your mental fitness, your mental well-being, your psychological outcome. And then you can see all the other bullet points. I'm not gonna go through all those, but if you're interested in this kind of stuff, we have a lot of courses and educational programs that we have here at doctalbot.com. We have a retreat that we run that teaches people about mental fitness and things like that here, threewavesbnb.com, and some of the products that I'm launching. And some of the ingredients that we'll talk about tonight are in some of those products at threewaveswellness.com. So you can always go to Three Waves Wellness as your central portal, and then it can link out to everything else. So if you like this kind of stuff, you want to dig in deeper, that's probably the best place to go. Okay, the last bunch of calls. We've been doing these Wellness Wednesdays now for some time, and it's great because we're seeing more and more people sign up to get notified of all the different topics that we cover each week. So you can see some of the bullet points here of the things that we've covered. All of these are recorded, and they're posted up in our online mental fitness community so that you have access to all of them. So there's a cortisol masterclass, there's a GABA melatonin masterclass. We recently did one on life stages. So we talked about pregnancy in episode 1. We talked about menopause in episode 2. We talked about successful aging in episode 3. So you can see all those. Some of them are up on YouTube. If you want to see the ones that are on YouTube, you can go here to my YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/Dr. Sean Talbot. And then on my Doc Talbot website, like I said, I have a lot of educational content. We have these Wellness Wednesdays you can sign up for. We have a mental fitness quiz that you can take. It's perfectly free to go in and put in your information and sort of see where you stand on the major metrics of overall mental fitness. It's based on some of the most studied, well validated psychological surveys that are out there. And then this last one, this is a free ebook. If you go to doctalbot.com/level up, you'll get this ebook, Ancient Remedies for Modern Performance. And so in there, we talk about psychobiotics, right? These kinds of biotics that can change your psychology in a positive direction, right? Help you with your mood, help you with your energy, help you with your mental focus, help you with your motivation, etc. But we also talk about different plant extracts that are nootropics. Sometimes these are called brain boosters, and we talk about adaptogens, things that can help you adapt to stress better, cordyceps mushroom and rhodiola and ashwagandha, and there's a whole host of those. So this is a pretty robust ebook, and you can get it for free if this is the kind of thing that you like to nerd out about. Okay, so I'll just say a couple of quick words about our company before we jump into the content tonight. So my company is called Three Waves Wellness. We are the holistic mental fitness company. We were just recently voted a startup star, which is basically startup of the year for 2026. So super excited to get that. And one of the main reasons that we were voted startup of the year is that we are trying to bring this idea of mental fitness out to the masses in a really coordinated way. And so the way that we do that is we set up the world's first mental fitness retreat in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We have trained over 1,000 certified mental wellness coaches around the world. And we have some really exciting updates to that program that are going to be coming later on this month. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. And we've launched a series of science-based nutraceuticals. So if you are, some of you might be customers of ours right now. We've got one product called Stress Chocolates. It helps you reduce your stress. It helps improve your mood. But really importantly, it helps you improve your sleep quality overnight. So you take one of these little chocolates before you go to bed. It helps your body make melatonin more efficiently. We have a really nice herb-infused kombucha that helps with mental fitness, meaning it helps with energy levels and motivation during the day. And it's kombucha, so it helps with the whole gut-brain axis, as a fermented food. And then this product, Zenith, this is our flagship product. This is a multi-biotic product that helps with resilience. It helps you handle stress better. And if you're one of our customers, recently you've probably seen in your orders, we've been sending out samples of our new product, which is coming next month, which is a really comprehensive sleep product that helps you fall asleep faster, helps you stay asleep longer, and helps you with overall sleep quality. So you spend more time in REM sleep, how your brain recovers. You spend more time in deep sleep, which is how your body repairs itself. So it's getting rave reviews. So that's just, we're broadening out our mental fitness line of products based on the new science of the microbiome and the gut-brain axis. And then last thing, we have a really nice affiliate program. So a lot of people come in as customers and they go, "Oh my gosh, I want to share this with all my friends," and we allow you to do that, and you can earn a commission when they buy a product. So you can see all that kind of stuff at threewaveswellness.com. So, what is all this stuff about biotics? That we have four main biotics that we talk about. Probiotics are the bacteria. Prebiotics are their food or their fuel or their source of nourishment. So what you're seeing a lot now is, in the marketplace, you'll see a lot of isolated probiotic products that are just different collections of bacteria. That's what we covered last week. Tonight we're going to focus on the prebiotics. These are almost always fibers, not 100% of the time, but mostly fibers. So we're going to talk about those. The reason that's important is because fiber is what your microbiome wants to eat. So if you're fiber deficient, like most people are, you're basically starving your microbiome. So they don't have the fuel for them to live. They don't have the fuel to maintain the environment of the gut. So you might develop something called leaky gut. You don't have the fuel for them to have the building blocks to make all the neurochemicals that we want, the serotonin that helps us be happy, the dopamine that helps us with motivation, the GABA that helps us relax, et cetera, right? So, you need the bacteria, but you also need to nourish the bacteria at an optimal level so they can do their job efficiently. What you're seeing in the marketplace is companies that are doing what are called symbiotics, synergistic biotics, where they're trying to combine bacteria with prebiotics, right? It makes perfect sense, but it's in its infancy. Let me just say it that way. And I see companies out there that are combining the wrong bacteria with the wrong prebiotics, or the right bacteria with the wrong prebiotics, right? They're having a mismatch, and you'll see why that makes sense. In just a little bit, right? Because let me just say here, certain bacteria prefer to eat certain prebiotics. So you have to have a match between the right probiotic and the right prebiotic as its preferred fuel source. If you don't, then you're not going to get that synergistic effect. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about symbiotics tonight. Phytobiotics, like I mentioned, are the plant extracts that have the signaling qualities, and postbiotics are the pasteurized, heat-killed, dead bacteria. You can also consider some of the signaling molecules that bacteria make to be postbiotics, and we'll dive into all that when we get to the postbiotics seminar next week. Okay, so all these different biotics, and the thing that is interesting about like why you might want to combine different biotics, right? Not rely on just a probiotic or just a prebiotic, is because they have different modes of action. They have different onsets of action. So the phytobiotics and the postbiotics that we're going to talk about in the next 2 weeks, they generally have a pretty rapid onset of action, meaning you feel them. They start working very quickly, sometimes in hours, sometimes in days. And so if you use the right phytobiotic and the right postbiotics, you can get benefits for lowering your stress or improving your mental focus or increasing your energy, just as a couple of examples, in in an hour or in a couple of hours or in a couple of days. That's great, because what we can do if we formulate these symbiotics in a strategic way is we can use a phytobiotic and a postbiotic that work quickly, along with a prebiotic or a probiotic that might take weeks or months to work. So while the prebiotic and the probiotic are working in the background, so to speak, you're getting benefits. So in a multibiotic product, we have the potential to say, okay, we're going to lower your stress in an hour, and then in a couple of days, we're going to help your brain fog go away, and then a little while after that, maybe a week or two, we're going to improve your resilience, your ability to handle stress. And then maybe after a month or two, we're able to solve like a real mood issue. So you're less depressed, or you're less anxious, or you have better sleep quality, for example. So that's the promise of where the science is taking us, is that we're able to combine these different biotics to really tailor and customize the kind of effect that somebody is looking for, right? So before we go any further, let's define exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight. So a prebiotic is, and this is the definition from the Prebiotic Association, a product or ingredient that is utilized in the microbiota, that's the collection of bacteria in your gut, producing a health or performance benefit. So there has to be, it can't just be any old fiber. One of the things that we say when we're talking about prebiotics is that all prebiotics are fibers, and that's kind of true with an asterisk, because there's a couple of prebiotics that I'm going to talk about tonight that aren't actually fibers, but not all fibers are prebiotics. There are lots of fiber sources out there that your microbiome can't use. The thing about a prebiotic is that it's a type of fiber that they use as food. Sometimes researchers will refer to prebiotics as microbiome accessible carbohydrates, because fibers are also carbohydrates, or microbiome accessible fibers, because there's, like all fibers, humans can't digest. The reason fiber is good for us is because it's good for our bacteria. And if we nourish our bacteria at the level that they need, then they're going to produce compounds that are good for us. Okay, we're not digesting the fiber, we're eating the fiber and delivering it to the microbiome. They're digesting the fiber and then they're producing beneficial compounds. So like the neurotransmitters that I just mentioned, the serotonins and the dopamines and the GABAs, but they're also producing short chain fatty acids, which I'll talk about tonight, particularly one specifically called butyrate. If they're producing these kinds of compounds, they're probably not producing other compounds like inflammatory kinds of compounds. So yeah, that's what a prebiotic is. It's a fiber that gives our microbiome some good nourishment. So last week, when I talked about probiotics, I talked about fermented foods a little bit. And I made the distinction that, of all these fermented foods, kefir, yogurt, kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, etc., the reason that fermented foods are good for us is because they're a collection of a lot of these different kinds of biotics. So you will see let's just say yogurt as our example food. You will see beneficial bacteria in that yogurt, right? So there's your bacteria piece. You will also see different like collection of compounds that get made during that fermentation process. So you take whatever you're fermenting. If you're fermenting like a milk into a yogurt, or you're fermenting a cabbage into a sauerkraut, or you're fermenting some other kinds of vegetables into a kimchi, the bacteria will eat on that fiber in that food, and during the fermentation process, they're making a lot of these compounds. And so some of those are going to be oligosaccharides, which is a prebiotic fiber. We're going to talk about oligosaccharides specifically tonight. They might make polyphenols. They're not prebiotics, but they have a prebiotic effect, meaning they're not fibers, they're other plant compounds, right? Polyphenols, flavonoids, that can have a protective effect on your bacteria. They can have a building effect on the lining of your gut. What you see right here, this sort of like brick wall kind of a thing, that's the lining of your gut, and polyphenols can help maintain the integrity of that lining, so you don't have something that we would call leaky gut. That fermented food is also going to have organic acids and short chain fatty acids like butyrate. This is one of the reasons that a fermented food tastes sour, is because of those organic acids. So there's a lot going on in a fermented food, including prebiotics, which is the topic of what we're covering tonight. But when we shift gears and talk about specific prebiotics that we can identify, there's a lot of them. This is just a short list of some of the most common ones. There's fibers like acacia, resistant starch. You'll see resistant starch in things like unripe bananas, mashed potatoes that you like. There's a strategy of you make mashed potatoes or you make baked potatoes and you let them cool, and then you eat them after they're cool. Once they cool down, they develop this particular type of starch that is really good for your microbiome. This FOS stands for fructooligosaccharide. This GOS stands for galacto-oligosaccharide. Inulin is one of the sort of original prebiotic fibers. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you get the idea. There's a whole bunch of different ones. The reason this is important is that each one of those prebiotic fibers will preferentially feed a category of bacteria. Or said the other way, each category of bacteria has its preferred fuel source. It has its preferred food in terms of the fiber that it likes to eat, and that's a really, really important consideration for a number of reasons. So let me explain that, and then I'll give you a little story. So if we understand that, right, that different bacteria preferentially like to eat different kinds of fibers, that tells us right there that if we want to improve the one thing that is the most important of all the things when we think about microbiome balance, It's something called microbiome diversity. We want to have as many different species of bacteria in the microbiome as possible. And the way to do that is to eat a diverse collection of fibers. The more fibers we can eat or consume or bring into our diet, the more sources of nourishment we're going to have for all those different types of bacteria. So that's probably the most important consideration when it comes to prebiotic fiber. There's not one of these on, like, none of these little building blocks that you see on the screen right now are the quote unquote most important prebiotic. People ask me all the time, what's the probiotic that I should supplement with, right? And I think last week I think I did a good enough job to say, like, well, it really depends on the benefit you're looking for. All these different bacteria, strain specific bacteria, have a multitude of benefits. Some of them help solve your diarrhea, some help solve your constipation, some help with your, which are opposite effects in your gastrointestinal tract. Some of them help your energy levels, some of them help your sleep quality. Those also sound like opposites. Some of them help lower stress, some of them help you handle more stress. Some of them, you guys get the idea, right? There's a probiotic strain for every single benefit you can think of. There's a probiotic strain that's going to help you gain more muscle. There's a probiotic strain that's going to help you lose more fat. So, so there. Same exact thing goes for prebiotics. Every one of these prebiotics sort of shines with a particular set of benefits. And we're gonna keep coming back to, like, how you choose the right prebiotic for the right benefit. Okay, so there, that's probably enough for there. Here's elaborating on that point. So types of prebiotics, from fiber to fermentation to focus. So some of these prebiotics are just, a decent all around source of fiber. So if you're looking for just like, hey, I don't think I'm getting enough fiber. I think maybe I'm starving my microbiome. I think I just need sort of a general prebiotic fiber to just get something going down there, right down there in my microbiome. People will do that, and they'll get a FOS, fructoooligosaccharide. They're pretty cheap. Acacia usually is pretty cheap. Resistant starch is sort of a newer one that's coming onto the market as a commercial product, also pretty cheap. Inulin is very cheap. So you can get a prebiotic for pretty like small money, so to speak. The problem with those general focus prebiotics is that they're going to feed everybody. They don't necessarily feed just the kinds of bacteria that you want. They're going to feed lots of bacteria down there. And the downside of that is that you potentially will get some gas and some bloating. And there might be an adjustment period where you start taking it and you're like, "Ooh, I don't know if I like the way that that's making me feel, because now I'm feeling kind of swollen, and kind of bloated, and most people don't like that." What I usually say to people who are doing that is to say, you know what, start small, start at a low dose, build up gradually, because your microbiome takes some time to learn, how do we ferment this the right way. After a while, you might be producing some gas from fermenting these prebiotic fibers, but that gas might also grow a population of different bacteria that can thrive on that gas. So, like, you have some gas producers, and then after a while you're gonna generate some gas users, so to speak. Okay. You can get very targeted, and you can use certain acacia fibers that can help with weight management. So if that's one of your goals, there's a prebiotic fiber for that. I have polyphenols here. These are particularly good for helping with neuroprotection. So they can have gut benefits and they can have brain benefits. So you're nourishing both brains simultaneously. So I'm going to give you some specific examples of some of these as we go through. Okay. So just to let you know, there's lots of benefits of prebiotic fibers, some of which you can see on this slide. Right. Look at this. Like, wide range of what look like unrelated health benefits. How in the world can you get, a heart health benefit like cholesterol removal, and a cancer prevention benefit, and an immune system benefit, and a bone mineralization benefit, and an inflammatory bowel benefit, and an allergy benefit, and et cetera, right? How can there be so many disparate types of benefits with prebiotics? Well, it's because the prebiotic you choose will preferentially feed one of those probiotic families, so to speak. And then that probiotic family will proliferate and produce more of the signaling molecules that will have the health benefit. So you have to um, go into this thinking about not what prebiotic do I want, but what health benefit am I looking for, and then choose the prebiotic that delivers that, right? So we're going to talk about that at the end when we start talking about how do we choose the right prebiotic, right? Do we choose a lot of different prebiotics? Do we choose a blended one so we get a collection of benefits? Do we choose a specific one? So we'll cover that when we get there. Okay. This is I'm going to get into the weeds just a little bit now to kind of unpack this idea of matching the probiotic with the prebiotic. This idea that the prebiotic is going to feed a particular class of bacteria. But before I do this, I want you to envision yourself as a zookeeper, right? So if you were a zookeeper and you had to keep the animals as healthy as possible, one of the things that you would want to think of is, well, what do they eat? What's the best food for the animals in the zoo, right? Well, obviously, not every animal in the zoo is going to thrive on the same diet, right? You've got elephants over there, you've got tigers over there, you've got monkeys back there, you've got snakes, you've got, penguins, you got the whole thing, right? And penguins, all right, they like fish. Elephants like peanuts, or I don't know what elephants actually eat, probably, grass or trees or something like that, right? Lions are going to want some kind of a meat. Monkeys want bananas, right? Those are all very different foods. So if you're the zookeeper, you're thinking of feeding all the different animals their preferred food. It's exactly the same when we think about feeding our microbiome. Lactobacilli are going to want a different kind of food than bifidobacterium. They're going to want a different kind of food than Akkermansia. They're going to want a different kind of food than Streptococcus thermophilus, right? So you can go down the whole thing. And when you think about now your biochemical, your microbiome zoo, you're not talking about, elephants and lions and zebras and, 100 animals. Now you're talking about thousands, tens of thousands. And so you really have to have a diversity in your diet to feed optimally that diversity in your microbiome. And the reason for that match, right? The biochemistry of that match has to do with what you see on the very outside of this slide. So you see these little structures. You see these carbohydrate structures, you see these flavonoid structures, you see these other structures. The structure of a prebiotic fiber, and you can see my hand if you're watching me, you can see my hand, I'm making this kind of claw shape. That's going to be the shape of a particular fiber. And then a different fiber is going to have a different shape. And a different fiber is going to have a different shape. And a different fiber is going to have a different shape. All those shapes of the fibers is indicative of its physical structure, which determines what bacteria are going to eat it. So the bacteria, make these enzymes. The enzymes break down that structure. Once they break down the structure enough, then they can properly ferment it. Once they can ferment it, they use that as their fuel source. They also make these beneficial signaling molecules. So it really comes down to fiber structure in that prebiotic, which determines. So now you can see here's on the way outside are these fiber structures. And then a little bit further inside, at the very outside of this circle, you see all these different foods. So asparagus is a prebiotic food that I recommend all the time to people, but it has a different kind of fiber, prebiotic fiber in it than apples. And apples have different than leeks, and leeks have different than berries, and berries have different than beans and legumes, and different than bananas, and et cetera, et cetera. So on the outside there, these are the foods that I very often recommend to people as the key prebiotic foods for them to start adding into their diet, to start to train their microbiome to tolerate fiber better, right? Most of us, almost every single person watching this call right now or watching it on replay, has a fiber deficiency. The recommended intake of fiber in in North America at least, is right around 30 grams per day. A little bit more for men, a little bit less for women, just based on body size. Um, if you were to look at, and so recommendations 30, most of us are lucky if we get half of that, 15, and lots of people get far less than that, right? So if we're not getting enough fiber, we're starving our microbiome, or we're at least putting a short leash on it so it can't make the things that we want it to make for ultimate mental performance and physical health, and prevention of disease and all that kind of stuff. So um 30 is what we're told to eat. If you were to look at a healthy hunter-gatherer population, they're eating more like 100 grams, 120 grams, 150 grams of fiber. That's a lot of fiber. I don't recommend that anybody on this call try to do that. If you want to increase your fiber intake, by all means do it, right? We want you to get a good, healthy amount of fiber in your diet, but you have to do it progressively, right? Increase a serving or two, day by day by day. Don't hang up from this call and go start eating 50 grams of fiber tomorrow. You're gonna be bloated and gassy, and you're gonna have some problems, all right? So we're gonna talk about fiber intake in just a little bit. But each of these foods, because it has a different structure of fiber, is going to feed a different one of these bacteria. And so I've already made this point, not to belabor it, but it's a really, really important point. The way to get a diversity of these bacteria in your gut, the number one hallmark of healthy aging, is of being able to maintain your microbiome diversity as we go from our 30s to our 40s to our 80s to our 90s to our hundreds. And the way to maintain that microbiome diversity is eat a diversity of high prebiotic fiber foods, and or supplement with the kinds of supplements that we're going to get into. Okay, so yeah, let me put this on the screen, because this just makes the same point, right? Different kinds of prebiotic foods will feed your bacteria in your gut. And it makes it in a little simpler way. But I want to go up and look in the chat real quick and see if there's anything I can answer before we progress on into the next part of this. Okay. What are my thoughts? Okay. What is my thought process when someone says they have a weakened immune system and showing mold toxicity on labs and told to avoid fermented foods, but at the same time, you want to improve their gut health? That is a great question, because Rachel, you may or may not know this. You probably know this because you're asking this question, is that your gut like determines what your immune system is doing. About 70% of your immune system resides in your gut, and you need to have, if you want to have a healthy immune system, you have to have a healthy gut. Like there's no way around it, right? They are in concert with each other all the time, your immune system and your microbiome. The reason that this is recommended sometimes, people who have mold toxicity or any sort of a severe immune challenge, are sometimes told to avoid not just fermented foods, but also high dose probiotic products, because it's very likely they have leaky gut. And if you have leaky gut and you start taking in high probiotic foods, high bacteria foods, there's a chance that the bacteria that you're ingesting will leak out of your gut into your systemic circulation. And that can be a very bad thing, especially if your immune system is suppressed because you have one of these, immune challenges going on. So that's the main thing. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say it's mold toxicity that is the contraindication, but it's the thought that the mold toxicity is leading to leaky gut. And the idea is that you would want to solve the leaky gut first before you start introducing a lot of probiotic bacteria. So I agree with that piece of it. But prebiotics are one of the best ways to improve your gut integrity. I'm going to show you some specific data on that in just a little bit. So taking you from leaky gut to non-leaky gut, prebiotic fibers are one of the best ways to do it. In fact, let me do this. I'm going to move this chat out of the way, so I can show you this screen. All of these foods that are on the outside here, if I have somebody that I know has leaky gut, and I'll tell you how I determine that in just a second, I will recommend that they eat a lot of these foods as a way to improve the tight junctions between their individual cells of their gut lining, but also to grow their mucus lining. So the way that I measure if somebody has leaky gut or not is to measure a particular kind of bacteria in the microbiome called Akkermansia. Sometimes what we'll see, we'll get a poop sample from somebody, send it off to the laboratory, we get the results back, and if their Akkermansia is sometimes their Akkermansia will come back and it'll be non-detectable. That right there is a check mark. Yep, you have leaky gut. No Akkermansia means you have leaky gut because Akkermansia lives in the mucus lining of your gastrointestinal tract. Let me go back real quick and see if I can. I don't want to go back too far. Okay, right here. So right here, these little bricks, that's your cell lining of your gut. This yellow barrier right here, that's your mucus lining. That's where your Akkermansia lives. And so if you don't have any Akkermansia, that means you don't have any mucus lining, or you have a very, very thin mucus lining. You don't have enough housing, so to speak, for your Akkermansia. And so let me go forward again to that little cartoon. All of these foods are prebiotics that are known to grow your mucus lining. So we can take somebody who has undetectable Akkermansia, aka leaky gut. We can tell them to eat more beans, eat more oatmeal, eat more apples, eat more garlic and onions and leeks and asparagus and bananas and things like that. All of those are going to help grow that mucus lining, and then we can retest the person, 4 weeks later, and we can see them go from non-detectable Akkermansia to detectable but low abundance perhaps. And we can keep them on that until we see normal levels of Akkermansia. And then we can go, okay, now your gut lining is sealed. Now we can start doing whatever we need to do on the probiotic side or the fermented food side. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense to answer your question, Rachel. There's a couple more in here. I've been seeing more kids' gut products promoting HMOs. HMO isn't the health insurance thing, health maintenance organizations. HMO stands for human milk oligosaccharides. Thoughts on that versus sun fiber and bimuno for educational purposes. So, HMOs are good for babies, not necessarily for kids. So, human milk oligosaccharides are a particular kind of prebiotic fiber that is in breast milk. So mom makes this. In fact, probably about 30% of breast milk is HMOs. So think about that for a second, right? Mom is spending 30% of her of the energy she's spending to make breast milk. 30% of that energy is producing these HMOs that the baby can't digest, right? Remember, these are fibers. Humans can't digest fibers. The bacteria can digest fibers. So the reason mom is making that in her breast milk isn't to feed the baby, it's to feed the baby's microbiome so that the microbiome starts to work with the immune system and builds the baby's immune system. That's the whole idea of HMOs. After about age 1, or the time that we want babies to be breastfed, the benefit of the HMOs is like it's past. So your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 5-year-old doesn't really benefit from the HMOs. That age kid can benefit from other kinds of bacteria like Bifidobacterium infantis, which is also helping with uh, 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 improving the diversity of your microbiome. Bifidobacterium infantis is a particular probiotic that can help change the environment of the gut, so you're growing more bifidobacteria, which are then going to start producing some of the neurochemicals that we talked about before. So I don't think HMOs should be in kids' products, but absolutely should be in babies' products. And in the life stages masterclass, when we talked about pregnancy, we did talk more in detail about HMOs and the fact that a lot of the baby formula companies are starting to add HMOs into their formulas, which I think is a really good thing. Um, so uh, yeah, and in that life stages, there's another question here about, as a mother of a child who has had multiple food allergies, no one ever educated families about gut health and food allergies. We talked about the difference in allergies between babies that are born cesarean and babies who are born traditionally vaginal births. We talked about what their microbiomes look like in early life. We talked about how their microbiomes develop and train their immune system. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you can go watch that replay either in the online community or on YouTube. Um, so let me see. So Rose, I know that Rose is a fermentation person, and so she's asking a couple questions here. So do methanogens make up some of the gas producers? Yes, and that's why we can get some smelly gas sometimes. Um, and does a protein-rich keto diet have negative? Oh, where did it go? Have negative impact on the gut microbiome? Short term, no. Long term, probably. And the reason for it is that if you are doing like a keto diet or a carnivore diet or one of those kinds of diets that is very heavy on meat, if that meat is displacing fiber, then what your microbiome has as its food, it has these amino acids from the protein that you're eating. And so it will, like, your microbiome is very adaptable. Your microbiome will adapt and start eating that protein, eating those amino acids, and it will start making short chain amino acids, which tend to be inflammatory. Versus if it's eating plants, if it's eating fiber, it's making short chain fatty acids, which tend to be anti-inflammatory. So you can see right there, if you're eating exclusively meat for a long period of time, you're getting a chronic exposure to these inflammatory signals. And you're not getting exposure to these anti-inflammatory signals. So, like, how do you balance that? There's lots of people who will do a carnivore diet or a keto diet short term to lose weight, and get in shape and lose the fat and stuff like that. I'm not against that at all. There's a healthier way to do that, so that if you like eating that way and you want to stay on and you feel good and like that seems to work for you, there's a way that you can increase your fiber intake without damaging what you're doing on the keto side, right? So you could do things like you could be eating your steak, but have a side of black beans. You could have a side of low carbohydrate vegetables, like they're not on here, but collard greens, spinach, those sorts of things. Asparagus is a nice side for somebody who's on a keto or a carnivore diet. Tomatoes, onions, garlic, leeks. Those are all things that are low carbohydrate content and yet high in prebiotic fibers. Someone who's on that style diet is probably not going to do berries. They're definitely not going to do oatmeal. They're probably not going to do bananas or apples because those are higher carbohydrate, higher sugar, and those are the kinds of foods that they're trying to avoid. But they can still get the prebiotic fibers if they're choosing some of those other things, and that would be a good way to go long term because then you're getting those anti-inflammatory short chain fatty acids. Okay. Yeah, so Rachel's bringing up a good point here. So maybe mixing asparagus and other prebiotics into kids' smoothies to help with picky eating too. Yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to hide asparagus into a smoothie, but there are plenty of things you can do. Like oatmeal will go into smoothies pretty well. Apples definitely. Yeah, and there's plenty of prebiotic fibers like powders that you can add into smoothies that will have those sorts of benefits for kids who aren't going to eat these kinds of foods. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else. Okay, great. So I'm going to close that right now so I can go on to the next piece, um, which is to talk a little bit about these next generation prebiotics. So I formulate a lot of products, right? I do research on the products. I write about the products. I do educational programs about all these different ingredients. And one of my challenges as a formulator is that a lot of these prebiotic fibers are bulky, they're big, like they take up a lot of space. So if I'm formulating with something like a FOS, a fructoooligosaccharide, or a GOS, a galacto-oligosaccharide, or one of the ones that I really, so there's a galacto-oligosaccharide that I really like called Bimuno. It's been shown to help kids with autism. There's another fiber that I like that's called sun fiber. It's a particular fiber called galactomannan. It's also been used to help children with autism. Um, there are Bimuno has also been combined with a particular probiotic strain, and the combination of them really helps with weight loss and muscle building at the same time. So that's a good example of a synbiotic. The problem with all of these that I've mentioned is that you have to have multiple grams. So you have to have a gram or 2 grams or 3 grams or 5 grams. And so that's a lot of space. Like that's about the size of a like 5 grams is about the because they're low density is about the size of a golf ball or a ping pong ball. So like you couldn't make that into a capsule. You could never swallow a capsule the size of a golf ball. And so when you're formulating with those, it has to be a powder. It has to be something you add to a smoothie, or it has to be a drink mix that you mix up in a glass of water or something like that. And that's fine if that's the delivery source that you want, but it's not like it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. These next generation prebiotics do give formulators the flexibility because they're really low dose. They're milligram doses instead of gram doses. So that means you can put some of these, 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams of a prebiotic fiber. You can put that in a capsule. You can put it in a gummy. You can put it in a little chew. You could it really gives you a lot of like delivery flexibility, formula flexibility, so you can make something that's not a drink or a shake or something like that. It also lets you have what I refer to as precision benefits. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that sometimes these first generation or original kinds of prebiotics would feed everybody. Like you'd take an inulin, for example, and it would feed lots and lots of different species, which is maybe what you're going for. But if you're not going for that, one of the downsides of feeding everyone is that you can feed the bad guys too. This is one of the cautions that I have for people if they have something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They'll have bacteria growing in the small intestine where you really don't want to have a lot of bacteria. And if they start taking a lot of probiotics or a lot of prebiotics, because people with SIBO will have a lot of GI symptoms, they'll have bloating, they'll have gas, they'll have digestive issues. Sometimes they have constipation, sometimes they have diarrhea. There's all kinds of stuff going on down there that they don't want. We identify SIBO, and like they might be thinking like, oh, I'm having these gut issues. I should take some gut products. And probiotics are gut products. Prebiotics are gut products. Let me go out and get some of those. And they take them, and it makes the product. It makes their symptoms worse. And so it's because the prebiotic is feeding the bad guys along with the good guys. So you have to be careful with which prebiotics you're choosing. These next generation prebiotics really have these like dialed in benefits. And so you can choose one like this. I'm just going to share three of the ones that I've used recently. This one is called Benicaros. It's derived from carrots. So when a company who like makes you've seen those little baby carrots in the grocery store. They come all nice and they're all nice and prepared. They're peeled and they're ready to just open up the bag and just pop into your mouth or dip into your hummus, and like they're delicious. But in the processing of those carrots, they had to shave off the outside skin so they're all ready to go. What happens with all that carrot skin? Well, this company, a Dutch company, makes Benicaros. They found out that it has this really unique prebiotic in it called rhamnogalacturanan, or RG1, that selectively feeds beneficial microbes, not the bad guys. The bad guys can't use this. Only good bacteria use it. It reduces leaky gut and enhances immune system function. So this is a really, really cool bacteria if you're trying to solve leaky gut and enhance immune system function. The downside of that, I guess, is that it doesn't help your constipation. It doesn't help your diarrhea. It doesn't help your mental focus. It doesn't help your weight loss, except for the fact that weight people who are having trouble losing weight sometimes have leaky gut. And if you can solve their leaky gut, it makes it easier for them to lose weight. That doesn't mean that this is a weight loss product. It just means that it's solving the leaky gut. So if your objective is to solve leaky gut and enhance immune system function, then this is a perfect targeted precision solution to solve that problem. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does. I'm going to go into I just saw some things pop into the chat, so I'm going to look and see if it's related to what I was just talking about. What do you like to use to test for SIBO? I'm going to not answer that right now. I have a whole 1 hour lecture on SIBO that you can find on YouTube. So I'll refer you to that, just so we don't get too far off course. And so full size carrots and Bene carrots is one of these really really cool kinds of kinds of supplements. But it's like, you get the precision nutrition, but that means that it focuses on that. It doesn't focus on some of these other things. Another one that I really like is phytospherics. This is a corn-derived prebiotic called a phytoglycogen. So this is derived from non-genetically modified corn. It supports the production of neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, which helps to modulate stress, induce calmness, improve sleep quality. So this phytospherics is specifically for a mental fitness benefit, right? It's helping you with your mood, which is the serotonin effect. It's helping you with your motivation, which is the dopamine effect. It's helping you with your stress resilience, which is the GABA effect. So from like someone who studies mental fitness, phytospherics is right in my lane, right? This is something that I love formulating with, but it's not doing what Benicaros is doing, right? That's doing a whole nother set of benefits. I was going to say something else about phytospherics, and maybe it'll come back to me because I have some other graphs. And then these flavobiotics. These are from citrus. So this particular one is from sweet oranges and grapefruit. Different citrus have different bioactive molecules, and these are standardized to these compounds here, flavonoids, hesperidin and naringin. These aren't fibers, right? So everything we've talked about up to this point has been a fiber, right? A fiber structure that the bacteria can actively munch on and eat, and that's their food. This is a little bit different. So it's not technically, there's a little bit of argument in academia about should we consider these to be prebiotics, even though they're not fibers? Or where most people are kind of landing right now is that we can call them something like a flavobiotic, and we can say that they have a prebiotic effect. And so the prebiotic effect is that they improve microbiome diversity. So you're getting that same sort of a fiber effect in that you're eating this thing and it's helping to grow the population of good bacteria and deliver a health benefit. So that's everything that a prebiotic has done. It just isn't a fiber. So we're not calling them prebiotics. We're saying that they are what they are. They're flavonoids, but they have a prebiotic effect because they have these beneficial effects on the microbiome and then the health benefits. They increase short chain fatty acids. That's something that a lot of these prebiotic fibers will do. That's like a side uh, benefit of during the fermentation process of the bacteria eating that fiber. Just one of the side streams is that the bacteria make these short chain fatty acids, and they have so many good benefits for us. I'm gonna show you some of those in just a second. Reduce inflammation, improve the gut barrier function. That's an anti-leaky gut kind of a thing. So yeah, these are really really cool. But let me make one more point on this, and I actually write about all of these in my upcoming book, the Wild Medicine book. I just found out that this is on pre-sale everywhere. It's on pre-sale at Amazon. It's on pre-sale at Barnes and Noble. So if this is something that you might be interested in at some point when it comes out in a few months, please pre-order it. That really, really helps show the bookstores that this is something they should stock if there's a lot of people who are pre-ordering. So anyway, there's that. Oh, what I was going to say is what's unique about all of these different prebiotics is they're different structures, right? An RG1 and a phytoglycogen and a flavonoid are all completely different shapes. They're completely different structures, and that's what means that they deliver these completely different effects, right? This structure is feeding a particular kind of bacteria that is helping you with these benefits. This is a different structure that's feeding different bacteria and delivering different benefits, and et cetera, right? So it just, like, I keep reemphasizing this point that you want a diversity of these different fibers and prebiotic effects, because you want to have a diversity of all these signals. And so, something like this, Zenith, right? I mentioned this in the beginning. This is our flagship product, Gut Brain Resilience for Everyday Excellence. This is a multi-biotic product that focuses on resilience. So the reason we focus on resilience is because that's kind of like the overarching of the psychological mood states. Resilience is your ability to handle stress. And in order to be able to have better resilience, your mood is better, and your energy is better, and your motivation is better, and your focus is better, and et cetera, right? So that resilience is kind of like the top of the umbrella, if you will. And then you've got these different pillars of psychological mood states. So the multibiotic approach is that we can use all these different kinds of biotics to bring a holistic sort of an effect for people, not just one or the other. And there's pros and cons to that, right? So, like, I will work with practitioners sometimes, and they'll go, "Well, that's awesome that a product like Zenith right here can deliver all of that in one." And I have some of my patients or clients that's the perfect thing for them, right? Those two little capsules will have their prebiotics and their phytobiotics and their blah 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 blah, all the different biotics, and that will replace their need for this powder and that drink mix and that gummy and blah 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 blah. So it's like an all-in-one biotic solution, and that'll help a lot of people. But I will get practitioners sometimes who will go, "You know what? Because of the specificity of some of these effects that I want to do for people, I want to be able to target that, right? I want to be able to give this person the probiotic and the prebiotic that helps with their SIBO. I want to give this other person the probiotic and the prebiotic that helps with their IBS. I want to give this other person this and this that helps with their depression, and somebody else that has this and this to help with their PTSD, like whatever." I totally understand that, right? That those health practitioners want to have that ability to fully customize for every single one of their clients. But then there's the other piece where, for a lot of your clients, you just want to have something that sort of, solves the whole gamut, and you get them to a place where they feel better. And that's the lane that Zenith plays in. Okay. So on the call last week, I spent some time talking about this idea of clinically validated psychobiotic strains, the idea that strain specificity, this collection of letters and numbers after a probiotic genus and species, that's the thing that tells us what it is going to do. It tells us what the benefits are. It tells us what the stability is. It tells us everything we need to know about that probiotic. Now tonight that we're talking about these including, it tells us, the overall effect it's going to have. Now that we're talking about these prebiotics tonight, here's the prebiotic blend that we have in Zenith. It's a combination of phytospherics, which I just talked about, and those flavobiotics right here are a brand called Microbiome X. These specific ones will do those specific benefits. So this prebiotic blend, the Microbiome X, is going to help with leaky gut. It's going to help with improvement of short chain fatty acids. Phytospherics is going to help with the production of neurotransmitters. That's great. That's the prebiotic effect in this product, but it's not a prebiotic effect like I mentioned a few minutes ago. Galacto-oligosaccharide, Bimuno, has been shown to help autistic children. um, galactomannins also help autistic kids, but specifically help with gut motility, right? So gut regulation. It's not just for constipation. It's not just for diarrhea. It really helps with regularity, with motility enhancement, right? So those prebiotics will do that. These prebiotics will do these other things, right? So that idea of specificity holds for probiotics, like we talked about last week, but it also holds for prebiotics. And I think that's something that just bears repeating, a few times here so that people don't get the idea that, when I go out into the wide world and I'm talking to people who aren't necessarily in the weeds, like somebody who comes on one of these Wellness Wednesdays, they sometimes think like, well, yeah, all probiotics are probiotics, right? Or prebiotics are like they're fibers, and fibers are fibers. But we really have to get this point across that the specificity of the strain with probiotics and the specificity of the structure with the prebiotics makes all the difference in the world in terms of what they potentially will do for you. Okay, so here's a little bit more about the phytospherics, corn derived, and the microbiome X, citrus derived, and what they can do. And one of the things that they both do, and this is probably, if I had to say what is the biggest biochemical effect of prebiotic fibers, it's this. It's production of short chain fatty acids. So there's three short chain fatty acids. One is called acetate, one is called propionate, one is called butyrate. Butyrate is hard to say it's the most important, but it's the one that we know the most about. If you have more butyrate on board, if your gut is making more butyrate, you are going to have less inflammation. You're going to have better blood sugar control. You're going to have a tighter barrier function, so less leaky gut. You're going to probably be leaner. People who are lean have more butyrate than people who are overweight. Butyrate is one of the things that we know people who are physically active have more butyrate than people who are sedentary. In fact, like you could do a butyrate test on somebody, and just by the level of butyrate, with reasonable accuracy, you could guess whether that person was a couch potato or a weekend warrior, like a recreational active person, or an elite level athlete, right? Because exercise is related to your butyrate production. So butyrate does a lot of wonderful things. We want more butyrate. One of the best ways to get more butyrate is to eat all the foods that I said before, the apples and the asparaguses and the beans and all that kind of stuff, because they will help your microbiome make more short chain fatty acids, or you could supplement with one of these prebiotic fibers. So here's a little bit more about phytospherics. The reason that I really like this one is because of how it helps to improve neurotransmitter function. So short chain fatty acid production is one part of it. Neurotransmitter production is the other part of it. It looks like this. So here's phytospherics. Here's the structure of it, right? This corn-derived phytoglycogen is what the structure looks like. It's this highly branched kind of a fiber, and it's going to feed these kinds of bacteria that make acetate. It's going to feed these kinds of bacteria that make propionate, and it's going to feed these kinds of bacteria that make butyrate. So you're getting all three of these short chain fatty acids, which have all the kinds of benefits that I just mentioned. So here you eat it, your microbiome works on it in the gut. These short chain fatty acids will be absorbed into your systemic circulation, eventually make their way up to your brain, and you've got these mental wellness benefits. Your mood is better, your stress is lower. They're doing all sorts of things. There are companies, biotech companies, that are trying to engineer, genetically modify specific bacteria that they could introduce into the microbiome that would be super producers of short chain fatty acids. So think about this. Someday there'll be a drug on the market that is a genetically engineered bacteria that you will eat, that will populate in your gut, in your microbiome. And then anytime you eat anything, right, a Twinkie, it's going to take that and it's going to be able to make short chain fatty acids at an accelerated super producer level, because short chain fatty acids do so many beneficial things for our immune system and our metabolism and our mood. And like, to have something like that would be a blockbuster drug on the same level that like the Ozempics and the GLP-1s and things like that are now. So look for that to happen sometime in the future. But why wait for the future? We can do things right now by eating the right foods, supplementing with the right prebiotics to amplify our own short chain fatty acid production and to get those benefits. You can also take short chain fatty acids. There's some short chain fatty acid products on the market that are short chain fatty acids in the capsule. The challenge with them is that once you eat them, a lot of that short chain fatty acid gets damaged in your stomach acid, and so you don't really absorb as much of it as you're taking. The other downside of it is a little more of a practical thing. Short chain fatty acids, especially butyrate, really stink. They smell like sweaty feet, or cheese. Like sometimes people will smell that butyrate and they're like, "Ew, what is that gross smell?" Some people will say that it smells like throw up. It smells like vomit. Like the reason that cheese smells like cheese is because of the butyrate. And so if you have this compound in your capsule, you certainly can't put it into like a drink mix or something like that, because then you get like a fruit flavored, cheese flavored drink mix, and nobody wants that, right? You can put it into a capsule, but you get this little whiff and this little like aftertaste of like moldy cheese. And it's not a very pleasant thing. There is a butyrate source that I like. It's called butyrogen, and it's a combination of a couple of things that help your body make, like, it is butyrate, but it helps your body generate butyrate at a higher level. So lots of ways we can get more short chain fatty acids, and it's something that is highly beneficial for us. So here's some things about Microbiome X. So this is the flavobiotics from these two citrus sources. You can see from this graph right here that the group that got supplemented with Microbiome X had a huge improvement in their overall butyrate production, in their overall butyrate production, and their total short chain fatty acid production, which is a good thing. And so, again, why is this so beneficial for us? Because if you're having more butyrate and more total short chain fatty acids, you're getting all these benefits. You're getting energy benefits, gut barrier benefits, inflammation benefits, microbiome diversity benefits, immune system benefits, metabolic health benefits. And those are related to blood sugar and fat loss and belly fat and things like that. So lots and lots of benefits. And just going back to what I said about the biotechs that are making this genetically modified bacteria, think about that. If you could deliver all of these health benefits in one medicine, that would be a blockbuster for sure. Okay, but like I said, we can deliver that. And this last one impacts neurological health, gut brain axis, and cognition. This is one of the things we talked about in the healthy aging seminar just a couple of weeks ago. Maintaining that gut microbiome diversity leads to a higher level of short chain fatty acids, and that leads to a reduction in things like Alzheimer's disease and senile dementia, and cognitive deficits. So just so many benefits from getting more of these. So this brings us to sort of to the end, which is, this all sounds great. How do I choose the right prebiotic? How do I choose the right one for me, right? I don't want to go and take 10 of them. How do I choose the right one? And so the big thing is, make sure you're trying to eat more fiber, which we already covered, right? High fiber diet. You want to try to be at the higher end of this recommendation, 30 to 50 grams a day. Try to make that your baseline. And then from there, if you think you need additional prebiotics on top of it, you can certainly do that. Try to get it from a variety of food so that you're getting a variety of those different shapes, right? Those different structures of your fiber, which is going to feed a diversity of different kinds of bacteria. One great way to do that we do in our courses all the time, is something called the 30 plant challenge. This is the idea of trying to eat 30 different plant foods in a 7-day period, right? Over a week. And we know from big, huge data sets, American Gut Project and the Microsetta Initiative, we know that if you can get 30 plants in a week, your microbiome diversity is better than if you had 25. And if you had 25, it's better than if you had 20. And if you had 20, it's better than if you had 15. So the more we can get, the better. The reason that we focus people on 30 is because the microbiome diversity seems to kind of plateau out, whereas like 35 isn't that much better than 30, and 40 isn't that much better than 30. So 30 is like the sweet spot, so to speak. So this can be a really fun thing to do. This is a place where you can get your picky eating kids to go to the grocery store with you and pick out something of their own that they want to bring home, and they want to try it. They want to taste it. They want to figure out, how do I cook it? Like, do I have to peel it? Do I have to cook it? Do I eat it raw? Do I eat, like, what do I do with this? Is it sour? Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Like, you can make it a really fun thing with the whole family. Like, what the heck is that in the grocery store? Hey, produce guy, come over here. What is that? Where's it come from? How do you eat it? How do you prepare it? Go home, and once you know what it is, Google out a recipe, and like, you can make a fun thing about this. And 30 plants a week is going to improve your microbiome diversity, which is going to improve your production of all this, wonderful stuff that we're talking about. Um, so there, another way of saying that. Why is prebiotic variety important? A variety of prebiotics leads to feeding different bacteria because they feed on different fibers, leads to healthy, diverse gut bacteria, leads to good health for us, mental fitness, physical performance, reduced risk of disease, better aging trajectory, all the things that we want. Okay, so let's get back to how we're choosing. Then, once you have that high fiber baseline, then don't start thinking, oh, should I take FOS or GOS or ZOS or any of the inulins or acacias or phytospherics, or like, don't think about the prebiotic. Think about the benefit you're looking for, right? If it's a focus benefit and a mood benefit and a psychology benefit, then by all means, phytospherics is going to be good for you. If it's a leaky gut benefit, then microbiome X is going to be a good benefit for you. If it's weight loss, then a combination of Bimuno, which is a GOS, along with a prebiotic, which is, let me try to think of the prebiotic. We did a study on it. Lactobacillus plantarum KABP51. There we go. The combination of those helps with weight loss and sports performance, right? So think about the benefit you're looking for, and then you can go out and you can find like, you can make the match. This is the benefit I'm looking for. What is the science around this probiotic or this prebiotic, and can it legitimately deliver that benefit? So you're not making that mismatch that so many people do. What structure of the fiber is going to deliver those benefits? What dose is going to deliver those benefits? So are you going to have to take 10 grams of this stuff, so like a big scoop of powder? Or is it something where 100 milligrams or 250 milligrams, or Benicaros, right? That's a 300 milligram dose. You can find that in some of the green, fruit and vegetable powders that are out there. There's a couple of them that include Benicaros as a fiber source to help with leaky gut and immune system vigilance. What time frame is that going to deliver over? And should you combine it with other biotics, right? I just gave some examples of combining a probiotic with a prebiotic, and there's plenty of other examples out there. So just real quick, I'm just gonna animate through these. If you want more information about any of the kind of stuff that we do, about our retreats, about our certification programs and continuing education credits and things like that, or any of our products or any of our affiliates, just hit here, Three Waves Wellness. You can get all the information. You can reach out to me there as well. I'm pretty easy to find online. If you have questions that I can help you with, you can comment on the YouTube things. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and places like that, which I would appreciate. And thank you. We have all our healthy plants here. I'm going to go into the chat real quick and see if there's anything else that bears answering right now. And there's just a bunch of comments in there about people getting some value out of today's lecture. So thanks a lot for joining me tonight, you guys. I'm going to stop the share and invite you to join me next week, where we're going to be talking about postbiotics and how in the world a dead bacteria can actually deliver health benefits. So I think that'll be an interesting one for a lot of you. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.